Hello and welcome to the SpaceNews Commercial Space Transformers series, where we aim to give you behind-the-scenes look at the people and companies driving the space industry's commercial transformation. I'm Jason Rainbow, Senior Staff Writer at Space News, and today I'll be talking to Jörn Spurmann, co-founder and Chief Operating Officer for German launch vehicle startup Rocket Factory Augsburg. 2025 is shaping up to be a pivotal year for European launch ambitions, including RFA, which is gearing up for its first flight after shaking off a launch pad explosion in August. But getting to orbit is just the beginning. RFA will then need to prove it can carve out a place in a launch market that is dominated by SpaceX across the Atlantic. Jörn, thank you so much for taking the time for us today. RFA has been making some big moves, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your insights on the company's journey and the broader launch industry, of course.
Yeah, thank you, Jason. It's a super big pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so securing the UK's first ever vertical orbital launch license, and I believe it was also a first for a privately developed rocket in Europe, is a big milestone. What was that process like for your team? Any memorable moments to share, surprises, challenges along the way?
As you say, it's historic. There was no company before in mainland Europe that actually has it. So outside established spaceports
Mm.
like Kourou in Europe, it's really the first license award and makes us super proud. And obviously, so there are lots of emotion in the team. We had a big party and we're super proud of the achievement. It has come a long way. Took us 3 years to get here, thousands of pages of documentation written. So, and in that sense, obviously a long process that came to a very positive end. And we obviously the first company to receive it. That means there were a lot of first things we needed to get out of the way. And we did the process in all its details for the first time. So no real playbook available. Had to think out of the box and overcome, yeah, certain setup things with the Civil Aviation Authority. But yeah, both sides, I think, worked very diligent and thoroughly through the process and made it happen in the end.
Yeah, and of course the launchpad explosion last year was must have been a tough setback. How has RFA worked to bounce back from that, and what were the biggest lessons you learned from that experience?
I think the biggest lesson learned that it's a part of the way, right? We are developing rockets with a much higher risk profile. So in that sense, tests and their failures belong to the part of the way. And the important thing is that we learn from it, which we did. The failure investigations is concluded since September last year already. We have identified what was wrong. There are only minor updates necessary, but we found things which is positive, and we can now move forward with building the core stage, getting the test done and to completion, so that we can aim at our first flight.
Yeah, good to hear. That first flight was going to be in 2024, I believe, but it was pushed into 2025. Can you share any updates on your launch schedule and what key steps still need to be done to make that first flight a reality?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Timeline shifted, and these outstanding milestones are still the same. We need to complete the core stage qualification and assemble the whole vehicle to get to first test flight. The second stage and the third stage are still qualified and available for vehicle integration. So, yeah, it is essentially the core stage in putting everything together and do the first launch campaign.
Any rough times that we should clear our calendars for the
Yes,
first
is
flight?
2025 rough enough, or
Very good. All right. Well, meanwhile, Europe's launch sector is heating up with more competition than ever. What makes RFA different from other European players, and how do you stand out in such a crowded market?
I think it's a very simple answer in two dimensions. For us, this is price and the service level. So, on one hand side, we are with a dedicated small launch system on a much better service level underway than small satellite customers are getting on bigger vehicles as of today, which are very standardized and very fixed in what they can actually do. There's limited flexibility, there's limited delivery to exactly where you want to get. So all these elements are obviously much better on a small launch system. And for us, for RFA, low cost has always been the DNA from day one. So including as many standard items available from automotive or energy industry and proof that they are good to go to fly with these things into space has dramatically reduced the cost structures which we're operating at. And with that, our customers will benefit from a much better price than what they used to in the market today.
Mhm. And we can't talk about the launch industry without mentioning SpaceX, whose rideshare program has a firm grip on the
Mm-hmm.
satellite market today.
Yep.
What does RFA plan to do to carve out its own niche against such a dominant player in the industry?
They're very dominant as of today and very successful, and we have to acknowledge that, obviously. And what we only see is that the rideshare launches that they do for small set customers are very well booked into the future. So the manifest for that is pretty full. And the bottleneck that was there for several years still exists, because essentially there is more launch and cheap launch with the transport and bandwagon missions, but still it's highly utilized and customers still struggle to find spots in the near future to get up. So this is where we get in, providing more opportunity and at a better service level, while trying to obviously match somewhat the conditions that SpaceX is offering on a monetary side, price-wise. And with that, we believe that we can capture part of the market. But we have to say, the rideshare market is not our major target. It represents only 30% of our overall pipeline value. Most customers that approach us are really looking at dedicated launch and the additional service they will get from that versus flying rideshare on bigger launch systems.
Interesting. Yeah, could you elaborate on that? So beyond this test flight and your UK launch plans, where do you see RFA in, let's say, the next 10 years? Do you expect the
Ooh.
company to also move to also move out of small satellite launch at some point?
I think it has to be step by step. Obviously, everybody who has set out a company to develop a small launch system dreams of sending humans out of the solar system, obviously, and becoming the conqueror of the universe. But yeah, we have to do and manage that at proper steps and need to be successful and profitable along the way with the company. So getting to launch this year is the utmost importance. Getting the vehicle into a reliable service that is actually of added value to our customers is the next biggest priority then. And if this all runs well, sure, there's also the European Launcher Challenge coming in Europe, where the institutional market is looking for competitive service providers in bigger satellite segment than we are providing today. So yes, there are evolutions that would help us to evolve from where we are today. But yeah, as said, that has to come over the next 3 to 5 years.
Very good. Okay. And another trend that we're keeping a close eye on is this growing focus on sustainability in space.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so what is RFA doing to minimize its environmental impact, both on the ground and in orbit?
Yeah, we are quite advantages on the way with regard to that, because we have a stage combustion engine, right? So the engine that we're using doesn't create any exhaust that isn't fully burned up. Most engines work with a gas generator to accelerate the pump with which the engine is powered. And it's like in a car, you have an exhaust, but our engine really doesn't have that. So every liquid fuel element we carry on the rocket will finally be burned and converted into thrust that accelerates the rocket. And with that, it is already super eco-friendly in that regard, and the biggest changer of emissions actually on launch that we do. And beyond that, as I already mentioned, we're trying to leverage existing supply chains and products available. So we stop developing things specifically for space at small cadence, but using what is already manufactured at the masses out there anyway. And with that, obviously, there's a very green footprint if you look at life cycle on the RFA product overall.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Well, then to end on, and you kind of touched on this earlier, but um, how do you see the European launch market shaping the global space industry? The SpaceX and therefore US is very dominant at the moment, but where do you see Europe and RFA fitting when it comes to competition against US and China?
Mm-hmm. I'm actually very surprised that people in the US are actually asking that question, because I would assume that it is not a question at all over your place. In Europe, actually, it's dramatic, right? If you look at last year, 260 launches was taking place. Let's say roughly 300, 200 in the US, 100 in Russia and China, and in Europe it was 3. So there's an overall undersupply of launch overall in Europe, and we're doing very little in that segment. And I think that is the greatest ambition to fill and to provide new cost competitive and price competitive launch services to the market that actually reliably fly, which is the biggest issue at the moment in Europe on launch service overall. And this is where we hope that we can step in and provide that, and based on that, also serve the commercial market worldwide, as said, mainly with dedicated launch service for small satellites in the beginning.
Do you have any rough projections on just the split in market share, perhaps between US, China, Europe, in the years ahead? Because assuming many of these new European launch vehicles get underway and are getting service.
Yeah, I would say for us it's roughly 50-50 split between the US and Europe in terms of the market. And obviously, sure, in Europe there's a big institutional market. The commercial market is much lower. In the US, for us, it's obviously total opposite because we do not have access to the institutional market over there. So we only look at the commercial opportunities. So, but yeah, both continents and both markets are very interesting for us to provide our services into.
Great stuff. Jörn, thank you again for your time. That was fascinating, and I look forward to following your progress this year. Fingers crossed for the maiden launch.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jason. It was a real pleasure, and look forward to talk next time again.
Brilliant. Thank you.